My brother stood on a stage, smiling as hundreds of people clapped for an achievement that wasn't his. He accepted the biggest award of his career using my work, looked straight at me from across the ballroom, and acted as if I didn't exist. He believed he had taken my future forever. What he didn't know was that the truth was only a few minutes away from changing everything. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Aloan Mercer, and this happened in Colorado. If you looked at my family from the outside, you would probably think we were close. We celebrated birthdays together, spent holidays under the same roof, and smiled for family photos. But pictures never showed what was really happening. My older brother, Blaze Mercer, was always the favorite child. No matter what he did, my parents found a way to praise him. If he earned an average grade in school, they called him brilliant. If I brought home perfect grades, they simply nodded and asked what I planned to do next. After a while, I stopped expecting them to notice my hard work. As we grew older, nothing changed. Blaze was always the one everyone talked about. I became the quiet daughter who solved problems without asking for attention. Whenever something needed to be done, I was expected to handle it without complaining. I convinced myself that if I kept working hard, one day my efforts would finally speak for themselves. That belief stayed with me when I started working as an engineer. I loved solving difficult problems and creating better systems. Long hours never scared me because I truly enjoyed my work. Every challenge pushed me to learn something new, and every small success reminded me why I had chosen this career. Life took an unexpected turn when Blaze joined the same engineering company. I wasn't excited about it, but I hoped we could finally work together as adults instead of competing like we had growing up. I wanted to believe that our childhood was behind us. Not long after, I was given the chance to work on a project that could change everything for my career. It was the biggest opportunity one had ever received. I poured my heart into it, spending countless evenings refining every detail because I believed this project could finally earn the recognition I had spent my entire life working toward. The project quickly became the center of my life. Every morning I arrived before most people, and many nights I was the last person to leave the office. I filled notebooks with ideas, tested different designs, and fixed problems that no one else even noticed. It was exhausting, but every step forward made me feel closer to proving myself. Blaze was assigned to the same project, but our work habits couldn't have been more different. He liked attending meetings, talking confidently, and making everyone laugh. When it came to the actual work, he usually disappeared. He would stop by my desk, ask a few questions, and leave before doing anything useful. I kept telling myself that he would eventually start helping. One evening he walked into my office carrying 2 cups of coffee. He smiled and said he wanted us to succeed together. It was the first time in years that he sounded like a supportive brother instead of someone trying to compete with me. I wanted to believe him. As the deadline got closer, he began asking to see my latest designs. He said it would help him understand the project better before upcoming meetings. Since we were both listed on the team, I didn't think much about it. I opened my files, explained my research, and even shared early drafts that only a few people inside the company had seen. Looking back now, I wish I had been more careful. At the time, I never imagined my own brother would use my trust against me. Whenever I solved a difficult problem, Blaze congratulated me and told me we were making great progress. Those words made me feel like we were finally building the kind of relationship I had wanted for years. For the first time, I thought we were working as partners instead of rivals. Our parents noticed that we were spending more time together. They seemed happy and told everyone that their children were finally becoming a strong team. Hearing that gave me hope. Maybe everything was changing. Maybe all those painful years were finally behind us. The project continued to grow stronger with every passing week. My confidence grew because I knew exactly how much effort I had invested in it. I believed that when the company reviewed the final results, they would see the truth through the quality of the work itself. I never imagined that the person standing closest to me was quietly preparing to take everything I had worked so hard to build. I was focused on finishing the project the right way, while Blaze was already thinking about something completely different. I had no idea that my biggest challenge wasn't the project itself. It was the brother I had finally chosen to trust again. A few weeks before the company's annual Innovation Awards, I was checking some internal documents to make sure everything had been processed correctly. I wasn't looking for anything unusual. I simply wanted to confirm that the project had been submitted on time. Then I saw something that made my heart stop. The final submission listed only one creator, Blaze Mercer. I stared at the screen, hoping I had opened the wrong file. I searched again, but every document showed the same thing. My name was gone. Every record that connected me to the project had been removed from the official submission. It was as if I had never worked on it at all. My hands were shaking as I walked to Blaze's office. I closed the door behind me and asked him to explain what I had just found. He didn't look surprised. Instead, he leaned back in his chair with a calm smile and said, "I was wondering when you'd figure it out." I asked him if he had really submitted my work as his own. He didn't deny it. He simply said the company needed someone who could confidently represent the project. Then he looked directly at me and said something I will never forget. "No one is going to believe you created something this important." For a moment, I couldn't even speak. I had trusted him with everything. I shared my work because he was my brother. I never imagined he would steal months of effort without feeling guilty. I left his office feeling completely numb. That evening, I drove to my parents' house because I thought they would finally see how wrong he had been. I explained everything and expected them to be shocked. Instead, they defended him. My father quietly said that Blaze had always been better at presenting ideas. My mother nodded and told me that people naturally listened to him. She even suggested that maybe this outcome was better for everyone because he knew how to impress executives. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I reminded them that I had designed every part of the project myself. None of that seemed to matter. They acted as if stealing my work was just another family disagreement that I should quietly accept. I walked out of their house with tears in my eyes, but I made one promise to myself before I started my car. I would not beg anyone to believe me. I would not argue or create a scene without evidence. If I wanted the truth to matter, I needed facts that no one could deny. From that moment on, I stopped thinking like a disappointed sister. I started thinking like an engineer who knew that every action leaves a record, and every record tells a story. The next morning, I walked into the office with a clear plan. I wasn't there to argue with anyone. I wasn't there to accuse Blaze in front of my coworkers. My only goal was to collect every piece of proof that showed the project was mine. I started with my computer. Every version of the project had been saved during its development. I found the earliest design files, each marked with the dates they had been created. Then I gathered my engineering notebooks. Every page contained sketches, calculations, and handwritten notes that matched the progress of the project from the very beginning. After that, I searched through months of company emails. They showed discussions about problems I had solved, questions I had answered, and updates I had sent to my team. The messages formed a complete timeline that matched my work from start to finish. I also downloaded the system development logs. They recorded who had made changes, when those changes were made, and what had been updated. The records clearly showed that I had completed nearly all of the important work myself. As I organized everything into folders, I finally felt a small sense of hope. Facts couldn't be changed just because someone wanted a different story. A few days later, the project team held another meeting. Blaze confidently spoke about the project in front of several managers. At first, everyone listened carefully. Then one of the executives asked him a detailed technical question. Blaze hesitated. He gave a long answer that sounded impressive, but it didn't actually explain the problem. Another question followed, and then another. Each time, he struggled even more. I stayed quiet and simply watched. After the meeting ended, a senior executive named Corinne Ashford asked if I had a few minutes to talk in private. We went into her office, and she closed the door. She looked at me for a moment before speaking. "I've been watching this project for a while," she said. "Something doesn't add up." She explained that Blaze always sounded confident during presentations, but whenever conversations became technical, he seemed completely lost. She had noticed the difference several times. I didn't interrupt her. Before I could explain anything, she gave me a piece of advice that stayed with me. "Keep every document," she said. "Don't throw away a single record. The truth always leaves a trail." Those words gave me more confidence than she probably realized. I thanked her and returned to my office. For the first time since discovering the betrayal, I felt like someone inside the company was beginning to see what I had been living through. I wasn't alone anymore. I still had a long way to go, but I finally believed that the truth had a real chance of being heard. The night of the awards finally arrived. The hotel ballroom looked beautiful. Crystal lights hung from the ceiling, elegant tables filled the room, and every seat was carefully arranged. Employees from every department gathered with company leaders, investors, and members of the board. Everyone was dressed for a celebration, talking happily as they waited for the ceremony to begin. I walked into the room quietly and found my seat near the back. I didn't want attention. I only wanted to watch what would happen. My folder of evidence was safely with me, and I reminded myself to stay calm no matter what I saw. Across the ballroom, Blaze looked completely relaxed. He moved from table to table, shaking hands and accepting compliments as if the award already belonged to him. People smiled at him and wished him good luck. He thanked them with confidence, never showing even the smallest sign of guilt. A few minutes later, I noticed my parents arrive. They walked straight toward Blaze with proud smiles on their faces. My mother adjusted his tie while my father patted him on the shoulder. They laughed together and spoke excitedly about the evening ahead. Neither of them looked in my direction. It was as if I wasn't even in the same room. For a moment, that hurt more than everything else. I had spent my whole life hoping they would see me for who I was. Even now, when everything was at stake, they had already chosen which child they believed. I took a slow breath and looked around the ballroom instead of letting my emotions take over. The stage stood at the front of the room with a large screen behind it. One by one, different awards were presented. Winners walked across the stage, accepted their trophies, and thanked their teams. The audience applauded each speech with excitement. As the evening continued, I noticed Corinne Ashford sitting near the front with several senior executives. She remained calm and focused, occasionally exchanging quiet words with members of the leadership team. I couldn't tell what they were discussing, but her expression never changed. Finally, the announcer returned to the microphone. He smiled at the audience and said the next award was the company's highest honor for innovation. The entire ballroom became quiet. I could feel my heart beating faster. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. Blaze straightened his jacket and smiled with complete confidence. He looked around the room as though he had already won. His face showed no fear, no doubt, and no concern that anything could go wrong. Watching him sit there so comfortably made me realize just how certain he was that his lie would never be discovered. He believed the story was over. He had no idea that it was only about to begin. The presenter opened the envelope, smiled, and announced the winner of the Innovation Excellence Award. Blaze Mercer. The room filled with loud applause. Blaze stood up immediately, buttoned his jacket, and walked toward the stage with complete confidence. He shook hands with company leaders before accepting the trophy with a wide smile. From my seat, I watched without saying a word. Blaze stepped to the microphone and thanked the company for believing in him. He spoke about hard work, dedication, and teamwork. His words sounded polished, and many people nodded as they listened. Then he began talking about the project itself. At first, everything seemed normal. He gave simple explanations that anyone could understand. But after his speech, one of the board members asked if he could explain how the system solved one of its biggest engineering challenges. Blaze paused. He smiled, cleared his throat, and gave a long answer that never really addressed the question. Another executive asked how the design reduced energy waste without affecting performance. Again, Blaze hesitated. He used complicated words, but they didn't actually explain the process. People in the audience started looking at each other. A few quiet conversations began around the room. One more question came from another executive who had followed the project closely. This time Blaze looked uncomfortable. He glanced around the room before giving another uncertain answer that only created more confusion. The confidence he had shown just minutes earlier slowly disappeared. I noticed several company leaders exchanging serious looks. Then, before the ceremony could continue, Corinne Ashford stood up from her seat. She remained calm as she walked toward the stage. The room became completely quiet. She thanked Blaze for his presentation before turning to the audience. In a respectful voice, she said there was an important matter that needed to be addressed before the award process could officially continue. She explained that the company had recently reviewed several internal records connected to the project. During that review, significant inconsistencies had been discovered regarding the authorship of the work. A wave of surprise moved through the ballroom. Nobody spoke. Corinne continued by saying that because the company's reputation depended on honesty and integrity, leadership had a responsibility to verify the true creator before making the award final. Every eye in the room turned toward Blaze. His smile was gone. For the first time that evening, he looked nervous. I remained exactly where I was, holding my breath as the silence grew heavier. The celebration that everyone expected had suddenly become something completely different. No one knew what would happen next. But one thing was already clear. The questions Blaze couldn't answer had opened a door that could never be closed again, and the truth was finally beginning to step into the light. After a few moments of silence, Corinne asked the technical team to display the company's official project records on the large screen behind the stage. Everyone in the ballroom looked up as the first document appeared. It showed the earliest version of the project. My name was listed as the creator. The next file appeared with its original date and time. Then another one followed. Each version showed months of steady progress, and every important update was connected to my employee account. No one said a word. The screen changed again. This time it showed scanned pages from my engineering notebooks. Every page contained sketches, calculations, and written notes that matched the digital files exactly. The dates covered the entire period of development from beginning to end. After that, archived company emails appeared on the screen. The messages showed me answering technical questions, solving design problems, and sending detailed progress reports. Every important discussion about the project led back to me. Corinne calmly explained each record while the audience watched. Then several members of our engineering team were invited to speak. One coworker said I had spent months leading the technical work every single day. Another explained that whenever difficult problems came up, everyone came to me because I understood the system better than anyone else. A third coworker shared that most late evenings in the office, I was still working while many others had already gone home. No one had been asked to memorize a story. They simply described what they had personally seen. Each statement matched the documents already displayed on the screen. The room became heavier with every new piece of evidence. People slowly turned toward Blaze. He stood frozen on the stage without saying anything. The confidence he had shown earlier had completely disappeared. His face had gone pale, and he avoided looking at anyone in the audience. Everyone could now see exactly what had happened. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't shared credit. It was a deliberate decision to claim someone else's work. Even my parents looked shocked as they sat quietly in their seats. For the first time that evening, they had nothing to say. The applause that had filled the ballroom earlier was gone. Only silence remained. I stayed where I was until Corinne looked toward me with a gentle smile. Then she spoke clearly into the microphone. The evidence leaves no doubt. Eloan Mercer is the true creator of this project. Those words echoed through the ballroom. After years of being ignored, my work was finally being recognized for what it truly was. At the same time, Blaze lost the one thing he had been trying so hard to protect. His lie had fallen apart in front of everyone, and there was nowhere left for him to hide. After reviewing everything in front of the audience, the company's chief executive stepped onto the stage. His voice was calm but serious. He said the company had a responsibility to protect honesty in every part of its work. Because the evidence was clear, the Innovation Excellence Award presented to Blaze Mercer was officially withdrawn. A quiet murmur spread across the ballroom. The chief executive continued by saying that the company would begin formal disciplinary action against Blaze for violating company ethics and claiming work that did not belong to him. He explained that trust was the foundation of every successful team, and breaking that trust had serious consequences. Blaze lowered his head. He didn't argue. He didn't try to defend himself. He simply stood there without speaking. Then Corinne looked toward me and invited me to join them on the stage. For a second, I couldn't move. I had imagined this moment so many times, but it never felt real until then. I slowly walked through the ballroom. People moved aside to give me space. As I reached the stage, Corinne smiled warmly and handed me the award that truly belonged to me. When I held it in my hands, I felt months of pain, stress, and disappointment begin to lift. The audience started clapping. The applause became louder and louder until nearly everyone in the room was standing. I looked across the ballroom and saw people smiling with respect instead of pity. When the room became quiet again, I stepped up to the microphone. I thanked the company for taking the time to find the truth instead of accepting the easiest answer. Then I thanked the co-workers who had spoken honestly when it mattered most. I told everyone that real success could never be built on someone else's hard work. Recognition means very little if it comes through lies. The greatest achievement is knowing that you earned every opportunity with honesty, patience, and determination. I also said that difficult moments can test a person's character, but they can never erase the value of honest work. When I finished speaking, the applause returned even louder than before. People weren't just celebrating the award. They were celebrating the truth. As everyone continued clapping, I noticed Blaze quietly step away from the stage. Without saying a word to anyone, he walked toward the exit and disappeared through the ballroom doors alone. I watched him leave, but I didn't feel happy about his downfall. What mattered most was that the truth had finally been heard. For the first time in my life, no one could ignore my work, overlook my effort, or give someone else the credit I had earned. At that moment, favoritism no longer had the final word. The truth did. The weeks after the ceremony brought many changes. The company completed its investigation, and Blaze lost his position. News of what had happened spread throughout the industry. People who had once admired him now questioned his honesty. Finding another opportunity became much harder because his reputation had been badly damaged. I didn't celebrate any of it. Watching someone face the results of their own choices wasn't the same as wishing them harm. I simply accepted that every decision has consequences, and these were his to carry. A few days later, my parents asked me to meet them for dinner. They said they wanted to fix the family before things became even worse. When I arrived, they looked uncomfortable. After a long silence, my mother finally spoke. She asked me to forgive Blaze and move on. She said families should stay together no matter what happens. My father agreed and told me that holding on to the past would only create more pain. I listened without interrupting. When they finished, I calmly explained that this wasn't about one mistake. It was about years of being ignored, dismissed, and expected to stay quiet whenever something unfair happened. I told them that trust cannot return just because someone asks for it. They didn't know how to respond. For the first time, I wasn't trying to convince them to understand me. I was simply telling them the truth. Before leaving, I made my decision clear. I wasn't interested in arguments or revenge. But I also wasn't willing to pretend that everything was normal. Until real responsibility and honest change happened, I needed distance. It wasn't an easy choice. They were still my family. Even so, protecting my peace had become more important than protecting old habits. As the days passed, I focused on myself instead of looking back. I returned to work with a clearer mind than I had felt in years. The weight I had carried for so long was finally beginning to disappear. One afternoon, Corinne invited me into her office. She told me the company had been watching not only my technical skills, but also the way I handled a very difficult situation with patience and professionalism. Then she offered me a new leadership role. I would oversee future innovation projects and help guide younger engineers as they developed new ideas. I accepted with gratitude. The opportunity meant far more than a promotion. It showed that honesty, hard work, and quiet determination had finally been recognized. For years, I believed I had to fight for every bit of respect. Now I understood something different. The right people had been paying attention all along. I no longer needed to prove my worth to those who refused to see it. My energy was better spent building a future filled with people who valued truth, trust, and integrity. Months passed, and life slowly settled into a new rhythm. My days were no longer filled with stress or uncertainty. Instead, they were focused on building something meaningful. The team I was given responsibility for started working on new ideas that aimed to improve both company systems and community support programs. It felt different this time because I wasn't just completing tasks. I was guiding people, helping them grow, and shaping projects that could actually make a real impact. Every morning I walked into the office with a sense of purpose. My team trusted me, and I trusted them. We discussed ideas openly, tested solutions carefully, and learned from every mistake instead of hiding it. The environment felt honest, and that made the work stronger. As time went on, our projects began to gain attention. Not because of loud claims or big promises, but because of the results we delivered. The technology we created started being used in real-world systems, helping reduce waste and improve efficiency in ways that could be measured and seen. I stayed away from anything that reminded me of the past. I didn't need to look back anymore. My focus was forward, on building something that couldn't be taken away or rewritten by someone else's actions. One evening, after a long day at work, I stayed in the office a little longer than usual. The building was quiet, and I sat near the window watching the lights outside. For the first time, I thought about everything that had happened without feeling anger or sadness. What I realized surprised me. The award, the recognition, even the moment on stage, none of that was the real victory. Those were just outcomes. The real victory was something deeper. It was the decision I made not to give up on myself when everything felt unfair. It was choosing truth over silence, even when staying silent would have been easier. That choice changed everything that came after it. I understood now that betrayal can hurt, but it cannot define a person unless they allow it to. What matters most is how you respond when things fall apart. If you stay honest, if you keep working, and if you refuse to become what hurt you, then even the darkest moments can lead you somewhere better. Before leaving the office that night, I made one final reflection. Success built on lies disappears, no matter how strong it looks at first. But success built on honesty stays, even when no one is watching. If there is one thing I want anyone hearing my story to remember, it is this. Justice may take time, and truth may stay hidden for a while, but both always find their way forward in the end. And when they do, they are stronger than anything built on deception.